Hey everyone, let me kick things off with a question. Have you ever been cheated on? Maybe you caught them in the act, found incriminating texts, or a friend gave you the heads up. Most of us have been there in some form. But let me share my story. It's a bit different. It wasn't some secret message or a lipstick stain that exposed my wife's affair. No, it was my dog. Yeah, you heard that right. My German Shepherd, Max, was the one who revealed my wife's infidelity. But before I dive into that, let me introduce myself. I'm just an ordinary guy, working a steady job, providing for my family, and thinking I was doing all right as a husband and father. I have 2 kids who mean the world to me, and until recently, I believed we had a pretty good life. Isn't that how it always goes? You think everything's fine until it's not. My wife, let's call her Sarah, is stunning. She's the kind of woman who turns heads effortlessly. And yeah, I used to be proud of that. She had this magnetic charm that drew people in. We had our issues, money problems, the usual squabbles that come with a long marriage, but I never imagined she'd betray me like this. Now, this is where things get crazy. It was just another day. I came home from work, tired, probably thinking about dinner or which show to zone out on. And there was Max, trotting into the room as usual. But this time, he wasn't carrying a toy or a random stick from the yard. No, this time he had something else, a used condom, still tied and filled. I just stood there, stunned, staring at it like I couldn't believe my eyes. Max was wagging his tail, looking proud of his find, but I felt my blood run cold. It was unmistakable, a used condom, tied off and filled with someone else's stuff. And it definitely wasn't mine. My mind started racing, putting it all together. While I was out busting my ass at work, some other guy had been in my house, in my bed, with my wife. The proof was right there, dripping from the edges of that condom like a slap in the face. Most guys would have lost it right then, and they yelled, thrown things, maybe even stormed out. But not me. That's not how I operate. I don't panic or make a scene, I strategize. So instead of flying into a rage, I did something different, something that had been forming in my mind since I saw that thing in Max's mouth. I took the condom from him, and I didn't throw it away. I walked into the kitchen, thinking about my next move. How could I handle this? How could I make her pay, but on my terms? That's when the idea hit me. I'd make her a milkshake too, actually. One for me and one for her, but hers would have a little something extra. I dropped the condom into the blender, mixing it right in as if it were just another ingredient. I know it's twisted, but in that moment, all I wanted was payback. I wanted her to swallow the same disgusting betrayal she'd been feeding me. When the shakes were ready, I called her into the kitchen. "Hey babe, made you a milkshake," I said, calm as ever. She had no clue. She took the glass from my hand, smiling like everything was normal, like she wasn't sneaking around with some other guy in our bed. She took a sip, and her face immediately scrunched up. "This tastes weird," she said, squinting as if she could sense something. It was off. I just leaned back and smiled. "It's a secret ingredient," I told her, keeping my voice steady like it was no big deal. She laughed, took another sip, and asked what it was, still clueless. "That's why it's a secret," I replied, watching her drink it down. She had no idea what she was consuming, no idea that I knew everything. I sat on the couch afterward, turning on the TV as if nothing had happened. My heart was pounding, but I knew I had to keep it together. This wasn't the time for a showdown, not yet. I wasn't just seeking revenge, I was playing the long game. The moment I made that shake, I knew our marriage was over. I knew I was going to file for divorce. But it wasn't enough to just end things, I needed to win. I had to make sure that when it was all said and done, I'd be the one left standing with the kids. That's what mattered most, my children. And if I wasn't careful, the court could hand them over to her. With our incomes nearly the same, and the system favoring mums, she'd play the victim, bat her eyelashes, and walk away with everything, the house, the kids, the lot. I couldn't let that happen. So I stayed calm, played the part of the loving husband, even as she drank that vile milkshake without a second thought. This was just the beginning. She didn't know it yet, But her world was about to crumble, and I'd be ready. After what I did with the milkshake, I knew I had to keep my emotions in check. This wasn't just about quick revenge, I was in it for the long haul. My kids, my future, I couldn't let her walk away unscathed. The next move had to be mine, but I needed time and space to make it count. So I took a long break from work, not some beach vacation, but a tactical move. I told my boss I needed time off for personal reasons, and I had enough leave saved up to make it happen without raising suspicion. I needed to be out of the house, or at least make it seem like I was so she wouldn't suspect anything. Each morning, I'd get up, dress like I was going to work, and head out the door. But instead of going to the office, I'd circle back and slip in through the back entrance. Our house has a side door that's practically invisible, perfect for sneaking in without being noticed. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. On the third day of my vacation, I saw it. With my own eyes, Sarah was having her affair right under our roof, in our bed, while I was supposed to be at work. She wasn't even trying to be discreet. It was like she didn't care if she got caught. Assuming my routine was so predictable, she'd never get caught. That's when I realized I needed solid evidence. Words wouldn't be enough in court. I couldn't rely on suspicions, or the condom Max brought me I needed indisputable proof. That's when I decided to install high-definition cameras. Honestly, it was easier than I thought. The equipment wasn't as costly or complicated as I'd assumed. After a few purchases online, I had everything tiny, discrete cameras that I placed strategically around the house, the bedroom, the living room, even the hallway where her lover came and went. Setting them up took some finesse, but once they were in place, it was like I had a front row seat to her deceit. But I wasn't finished. I wasn't just out to catch her cheating, I wanted to break her down mentally and play this smart. Divorce courts can be tricky, and I knew she'd try to portray herself as the victim, so I needed her to look unstable. That's when I began pushing her more often toward her therapist. Sarah had been seeing a psychologist on and off for a while, mainly for stress and anxiety, nothing major, but enough for me to know there was a weakness I could take advantage of. I started planting subtle suggestions, manipulating situations to make her feel she needed those sessions more. I'd create arguments out of thin air, pushing her buttons just enough to keep her on edge. Sometimes I'd express concern for her mental health, suggesting it might be wise to see the therapist more regularly. Other times, I'd dredge up old issues from our marriage, making her feel like she might be the problem, nudging her into self-doubt. It wasn't difficult, she was already vulnerable, and I knew exactly how to press the right buttons. It worked soon. She was booking more sessions, convinced that the rising stress in her life wasn't due to her own actions, but was somehow tied to our marriage, to me. Perfect. While all of this was unfolding, I wasn't just sitting idly by. I had already contacted a lawyer, a skilled one. I didn't want just any average divorce attorney. I wanted someone ruthless who could help ensure I got what I deserved. After explaining the situation, my lawyer quickly advised me on what steps we needed to take. We began documenting everything, all the evidence from hidden cameras, every strange charge on her credit card, every late-night outing. We were building a case, and with each passing day, I was getting closer to my goal. She had no clue what was coming. Sarah thought she was getting away with her affair, and as long as I played dumb, she continued to get tangled in her web of lies. But I knew better, this game was mine to win. We were ready, my lawyer and I were preparing for the divorce, compiling all the evidence meticulously. There would be no escape for her when the time came. When I finally made my move, it would be with everything I had, and when it was over, I'd make sure my kids were with me, leaving her with nothing but her lies. This was just the beginning. A few days after installing those cameras, I finally got what I'd been waiting for, a clear recording of my wife, Sarah, cheating on me in our own bedroom. It wasn't some blurry, unrecognizable footage, it was high quality, undeniable evidence. There was no denying what was on that screen. Watching it, I felt emotions I can't even describe. It wasn't just anger or betrayal, it was a slow realization that the woman I had built my life with was a complete stranger. There she was, in the bed we once shared, doing things I didn't even want to imagine. It was sickening, but I kept my composure. That's the thing, I never let my emotions control me. I didn't want to ruin everything in a fit of rage. Sure, a part of me wanted to send the video to everyone I knew right then, to destroy her world instantly. But that would have been too easy. I had to wait and be patient. Revenge isn't satisfying when it's immediate. You have to let it simmer, let the tension build until it snaps at just the right moment. Timing is everything, and I wasn't about to waste the perfect opportunity by acting prematurely. My lawyer had been preparing everything behind the scenes. The paperwork was ready, and we were set to move forward as soon as I gave the signal. I knew I had to strike when it would hurt her the most, when she'd feel the full weight of her actions. So I waited just a little longer. Each day felt like a countdown, and I could see it in her eyes. She had no idea what was about to hit her. She carried on as if everything was normal, sharing a bed with me, making small talk as though nothing was wrong. The audacity of it all was unbelievable. Then, when everything was perfectly aligned, I sent the video. It went out to all our mutual friends, every single one of them. There was no explanation, no context, just raw footage. I didn't need to say anything. The video spoke for itself. Within minutes, my phone blew up with messages. People were shocked, some in disbelief, others disgusted. A few reached out to offer their sympathy. News of it spread like wildfire. Her seemingly perfect world was falling apart, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I didn't want more attention than necessary, but I needed people to see who she really was. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, the whispers, the judgment. She became a pariah overnight. Those who saw her as a loving wife now knew the truth, and it shattered the image she'd built. Once the video was out, I didn't waste any time. I went straight to her and told her plainly that I was filing for divorce. Her reaction was unforgettable. She stood frozen, stunned by what was happening. I'll never forget the look in her eyes, wide with shock, her lips parted as if trying to speak but unable to. And then, when reality hit, she snapped. She erupted in anger, hurling insults, her voice trembling with fury. "I never loved you," not once she screamed. I just stood there, watching her unravel. Her words didn't affect me anymore. I was already emotionally checked out. I knew she was trying to provoke me, to make me feel something, but it didn't work. I wasn't the one at a loss here. I calmly looked at her and said, "It doesn't matter now, we'll settle this in court." That statement momentarily silenced her, and I could see her thoughts racing, trying to figure out a way to twist the situation in her favor. Deep down, though, I think she knew there was no turning back. This divorce was happening, and she was on the brink of losing everything. Let me explain the court process. You might think divorce court is a tense, nerve-wracking experience, but for me, it was surprisingly gratifying. Walking into that courtroom, I felt empowered. I was fully prepared, and my lawyer was ruthless. We had reviewed every detail, strategizing to ensure no loose ends remained. By the time we sat down before the judge, I knew exactly how things would unfold. I didn't hold back when it was my turn to speak. I detailed her infidelity and discussed her mental health issues, but not in a way that made me seem heartless. I framed it as genuine concern, explaining how I'd been worried about her for a long time, highlighting her frequent visits to a psychologist and her increasingly erratic behavior. I carefully portrayed myself as the stable, caring parent looking out for our children's best interests. Then came the piece de resistance, the video, the same one I had sent to our friends. I played it in court for everyone to see. The room fell silent, and the evidence on that screen was undeniable. By the time it ended, Sarah sat there, pale and speechless. She tried to shift the blame, yelling, "He's a criminal," and accusing me of distributing the video without her consent and invading her privacy. She was desperate, hoping to flip the narrative and make me the villain. But I was prepared. Calmly, I explained that my account had been hacked, and someone had stolen the video from my files and distributed it without my consent. I even had paperwork to back it up, including a police report filed on the same day about a fraud incident involving $542 stolen from my account. Presenting this in court, I positioned myself as a victim just like her, and it worked. The judge couldn't blame me for the video leak, leaving Sarah appearing desperate and grasping at straws. I completely outmaneuvered her. She had tried to cast herself as the victim, but my long game paid off. The court ruled in my favor. I got full custody of the kids. She could only see them by agreement and under supervision. She lost the house, her friends' respect, and everything she had counted on. As for me, I walked out knowing I had won. I had my kids, my life, and my dignity intact, while Sarah was left with nothing but the fallout of her choices. I couldn't have been more satisfied. For me, it wasn't just about the divorce, it was about reclaiming control of my life, and it felt incredibly good. Life after the divorce went smoothly. I had custody of the kids, my life was getting back on track, and Sarah seemed to fade into the background like a bad memory. I hoped she would quietly rebuild whatever she could from the ruins of our marriage, but that hope was short-lived. Out of nowhere, I got a call from my lawyer. His voice was calm, but edged with tension, the kind that makes your stomach drop. "We have a situation," he said. Sarah had filed a motion to reopen the custody case, arguing the original proceedings were unfair. Worse, she accused me of manipulating the court to paint her as unstable, and now she was alleging emotional abuse toward her and the kids during our marriage. It was surreal. She claimed I had rigged the divorce process, neglected the kids, and been verbally abusive, using my influence to turn them against her. None of it was true, but her willingness to stoop that low was shocking. It wasn't about custody anymore, this was her revenge. I went into preparation mode, meeting with my lawyer to map out our defense strategy. We already had the evidence from the divorce, the recordings, video, police report, everything was still in place. But now, we had to counter these new claims, dissecting every detail of our past to dismantle her lies. In the weeks before the hearing, Sarah didn't hesitate to make her accusations public, telling anyone willing to listen that I had manipulated the legal system and was unfit to be a father. She was painting me as the monster in her story, and while it didn't surprise me, it was infuriating to see her weaponize the system. Walking into the courtroom this time felt different. The first time, I was driven by anger and determination. Now, I was just exhausted by her relentless games and lies. But I had to keep fighting for my kids. Sarah sat there, smug, as if she believed her own story. Her lawyer portrayed her as the victim of some grand manipulation, accusing me of exploiting her mental health issues and orchestrating the case against her to alienate her from our children. She even accused me of emotionally abusing her, painting herself as a long-suffering victim. But when my turn came, I methodically dismantled her narrative. I revisited the video evidence of her affair, her months of deception, and the way she had prioritized her relationship over our family. I didn't just deny the abuse allegations, I obliterated them. I presented witnesses, records, and even the kids' school reports, all showing how much better they were since I'd taken custody. Her own therapist's psychological reports portrayed her as the one struggling with control and instability, not me. I also brought up the police report about the day I supposedly leaked the video, proving my account had been hacked and the money stolen. That evidence supported my claim that I had no control over the video distribution, shutting down her arguments completely. By the end of the hearing, it was obvious that Sarah had overplayed her hand. Her accusations collapsed under scrutiny, leaving her scrambling to justify herself once more. Her lawyer tried to twist the narrative, but there was nothing left to manipulate. When the final ruling came, the judge saw through everything. The court upheld the original custody arrangement, full custody to me with limited supervised visits for her. There was no sympathy left for her in that courtroom. In fact, the judge even reprimanded her for wasting the court's time with baseless accusations. It was over once more. As I left the courtroom, I didn't feel the satisfaction I had the first time. It wasn't a victory, it was merely survival. Sarah had tried to take everything from me again, but she failed. Yet, the cost was high. The damage she'd done to our kids, dragging them through this chaos, couldn't be undone. She ruined whatever chance she had left to be a real mother to them. I had won again, but I was finished playing her games. After the last court battle, life started to feel like it was mine again. A strange kind of calm settled over the house once everything was finally over. No more court dates, no more late-night legal meetings, and no more dealing with Sarah's toxic games. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. I focused on my work, and it paid off. Within a few months, I got promoted, which was unexpected. The extra money was nice, but more importantly, it gave me a renewed sense of control over my life. Things were finally starting to fall into place. The kids were adjusting too, getting used to the new routine, spending weekdays with me and seeing their mother only during supervised visits. I made sure to keep them occupied with family game nights, park outings, and even cooking together. I wanted them to know that despite all the upheaval, their home life was stable. I also began to cautiously step back into the dating world, slowly regaining my trust in relationships. That's when I met Lisa. She was everything Sarah wasn't: grounded, kind, and most importantly, drama-free. There were no mind games or manipulations, she was just genuine. We clicked right away, but I was careful not to rush things. Lisa was patient, never pushing me for more than I was ready to give. Over time, I realized that not all relationships were destined to become toxic. Things were looking up for me, but Sarah's life was taking a different turn. Soon after the court ruling, she jumped into a new relationship. I wasn't surprised, she always needed someone around to validate her. But this guy was trouble. Rumors quickly spread about his controlling behavior, public arguments, humiliations, and their relationship spiraling out of control. It was ironic, really. For years, Sarah had controlled every aspect of our marriage, manipulating and gaslighting me, making me feel like I was the problem. Now, she was on the receiving end of that same toxicity. At first, I didn't care what she did with her life, it was no longer my concern. In fact, I felt some satisfaction knowing she was finally facing the consequences of her actions. But as time went on, her chaotic relationship started affecting the kids. During supervised visits, she'd talk about her new boyfriend, trying to paint him as a great guy. The kids weren't fooled, they had seen enough of her instability and knew better than to get attached to another one of her poor choices. One day, after she missed yet another visit, my youngest asked, "Dad, why doesn't Mum come to see us anymore?" The confusion and hurt in his voice hit me hard. It was clear that Sarah's new relationship was her priority, overshadowing everything else, including her children. She was too caught up in her own mess to see the damage she was causing, and it was beginning to show. Sarah and her boyfriend were constantly in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons: public fights, cheating rumors, and drama spilling into their social circles. It was obvious she was overwhelmed. He wasn't just bad for her, he was ruining what little she had left of her life. At first, she tried to flaunt the relationship, as if it were a victory, but now it was clear to everyone that she'd made another huge mistake. Friends would message me, asking if I'd heard about her latest meltdown or seen her latest social media post. She had gone from over-the-top declarations of love for her boyfriend to posting cryptic, bitter messages about betrayal and lies. It was a train wreck, and she was the one driving it off the rails. Meanwhile, my life remained stable. I wasn't interested in getting involved in drama, and I made a conscious effort to keep my kids away from the chaos surrounding Sarah. My focus was on them, my new relationship with Lisa, and my work. As I continued to thrive, Sarah seemed to spiral further. Then, one night she called. It was late, and I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Her voice was unsteady, like she'd been crying. She started off sounding casual, talking about how she wanted to see the kids more and how much she missed them. But soon, the conversation shifted. She began talking about how difficult things had been, feeling trapped in her relationship with this guy, and how she didn't know where else to turn. Hearing her like that was almost pitiful. The once strong, manipulative woman who had wielded so much control over me was now lost and broken by her own decisions. Part of me felt bad for her, but mostly, I recognized that she was facing the consequences of her actions. I kept our conversation brief, reminding her that her access to the kids was limited to the agreed visitation schedule, and that was that. Hanging up, I felt an odd sense of closure. Sarah's life was falling apart, and for once, it wasn't my responsibility to fix it. I had my kids, my stability, and for the first time in ages, I had my peace. Sarah, on the other hand, was left to deal with the mess she'd created, and from what I could see, there was no coming back from it. The weeks following that late-night call from Sarah were unusually calm. There was no more drama, no messages, and no chaos. I heard through the grapevine that her relationship with that guy had ended in a spectacular blow-up. It was inevitable. She had burned through all her chances with me and with everyone else by now. She was alone, and I couldn't help but feel relieved. In contrast, my life was steady. The kids were thriving, adjusting well to their new normal. They were happier without the constant tension and instability, and we had found a routine that worked. They knew they could count on me. As for me, I was finally at peace. Lisa and I had grown closer, and for the first time in years, I was in a relationship built on trust and understanding, not manipulation or control. We weren't rushing anything, and I wasn't pressuring myself to make it perfect. It just felt right. After everything I'd been through, that was enough. One evening, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, I sat in the living room reflecting on how far I'd come. It was surreal thinking back on the wreckage of my marriage to Sarah. It felt like a lifetime ago, as though the man trapped in that toxic relationship was someone I barely recognized. But I knew that part of me was still there, shaped by all that had happened, for better or worse. The betrayals, lies, and endless mind games had left their mark, but here I was, standing on the other side, not broken but stronger. I realized it wasn't just about winning in court, gaining custody of the kids, or watching Sarah's life fall apart. It was about reclaiming my life, piece by piece. It was about learning to trust myself again and understanding that I deserved better than what I had settled for so long. It was about moving forward, not just surviving. Sarah's downfall wasn't something I celebrated anymore. I wasn't angry or bitter. I just felt sorry for her. She made her choices and was paying the price, but I couldn't let her story define mine any longer. My journey was about healing, rebuilding, and finding the quiet victories, the kind you don't always see, but feel as life gradually improves. It was about being a good father, a better man, and finding happiness again on my terms. So, where does that leave me? Honestly, it puts me in a place I never thought I'd reach, a place of peace. I've learned that life doesn't always follow the plan, but how you handle setbacks defines who you are. Sarah's betrayal could have destroyed me, but it didn't. Instead, it pushed me to take control of my life, and now I'm looking forward to the future, not just for myself, but for my kids and the family we've built from the ruins of the past. The past is behind me, and I've finally found what I thought I'd lost myself. And that, more than anything, is the real victory.